We're live on the page. We're live on YouTube now.
Okay.
And momentarily we'll be live.
So you're wearing a flannel shirt, which means it's probably a little bit cooler in Newfoundland than it is in Georgia right now.
Yeah, probably. Well, I expected it to be colder today than it is, so I'm actually a bit overdressed.
Okay. Nice hat, though.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it really stands out. Okay, almost done.
Well, it is, according to my phone, it is 88 Fahrenheit here now, which is roughly like 33, I think, Celsius. So it's pretty warm.
Yeah, if it yeah, it's
31. It's
ve-
31
yeah,
Celsius.
it's 21°C here, so
Oh, that would be lovely.
which is like 70. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's a little cooler than it was when I went for my walk this morning. So, yeah. I lived in Scotland for 3 years, so I had to learn how to convert, Celsius and meters and all of that, and stones. Over in the UK, they still do stones, like how many stones they weigh. Like, what is that about? But
Okay, well, we're live on all of the streams. Welcome to Avalon Expo Virtual. Um, oh,
awesome.
I lost my tab there. Uh, Ms. Tiffany Grant, best known as Asuka from Evangelion. Tiffany's 26 years in anime includes 1,700 plus voice credits like Infinite Stratos, School Live, Azumanga Daioh, don't think I pronounced that right, Full Metal Alchemist, and Little Busters. Tiffany's written 290 plus scripts for shows like Parasite and Infinite Stratos. Other credits include video games, stage, commercials, and film. You can find her on tiffanygrant.net, and there is a Tiffany Grant Facebook group, and
Yes.
she's with us here now. Hello.
Excellent. Hello. This is
So,
really cool. This is the first time I've done one of these. The only other Zoom meeting I did was like a teleconference with my doctor. So that was great. It's asking me for someone to be admitted into the room, but I
oh
guess
yeah,
you will take
I'll take care of those. Yeah, people will show up.
that. Okay.
So, tell us a bit about your career, how you got started, way back when.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm super excited to be doing this. So, welcome to anyone who's been able to join us so far. Um, I've been working in anime since February of 1994, so I've been doing it for a long time. I've been going to conventions since 1997, so I've done, oh my gosh, it's getting close to 300 now conventions. It's like 270 something. But so this is my first one where I did it from my own house. um, anyway, but my background originally was theater. So that was where I came from. Like a lot of actors, is that my background was doing theater from like elementary school all the way through high school, college, all of that. And that was pretty much my path. By the way, make very little money, if anything, in theater. Only at very certain high levels do you make any money. But I was just kind of going along, and I really did always have an interest in voiceover, voice acting, even if I didn't really know that exact term, voice acting. And but I mean, I had no idea how anybody would pursue such a thing. I mean, no idea whatsoever. And what happened was I got a call from a friend of mine, and it was somebody I'd known from junior high. And he was aware of these people in Houston, Texas, which was where I'm originally from. And he was aware of these people who had started up this little company, and they were importing Japanese video games, and then they moved on to selling laser discs, just like raw Japanese, anime laser discs. And then they decided, well, hey, let's start subtitling those. And so they made this company called AD Vision. And they had released a few shows that were just subtitled, and they said, hey, I know, let's do something that's dubbed in English. And they kind of looked around at the time at the studios that were doing it, mostly like New York and LA. And a lot of the shows that were done at that time, they were very much Americanized. A lot of them would, change the characters' names, change a lot of things about the shows. And so they said, you know what? I think we're just going to do it ourselves. So one of the founders of the company, Matt Greenfield, his background was actually in radio and theater, radio, film, television production, and writing and producing, directing, and all of that. So he was like, I know. He was like a huge anime nerd. He was the founder of the largest anime club in the Houston area, which for people who don't know, but Houston is the fourth largest city in the United States. So that's kind of a big deal. Anyway, so he has all this background with film production, and he's really knowledgeable about anime. So he says, I'll direct this anime. And they did not know how to find actors. So going back to my friend from junior high, he knew one of the guys that had started this company, John Ledford. And since they were just a little bitty company, only about a year and a half old, they'd never hired actors before. And they said, hey, if anybody knows any actors, tell them that we're going to have this audition. And that's really what happened. Is they put an ad in the Houston Chronicle, which is like the big newspaper in Houston, but it was just like in the help wanted ads. So when I went to the audition, there were all these people there who were like really dressed up for job interviews. So I think they were really, like out of work secretaries or engineers, or I have no idea, just no idea whatever. But yeah, so that's really how that all kind of coalesced. And February 12th, 1994 was when I had my audition, and I went in and I had the audition, which was really different than any audition I'd ever done before because I'd only done theater. And I got hired like immediately, like right after I did my audition. I started to leave the building, and John Ledford ran out after me and told me I got the part, like the female lead. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So that was really incredible. A lot of it was very fortunate timing on my part, I'll be honest. I was enthusiastic about it. I was excited it was my first paid acting job. And, then the rest is history. So I was the very first person to be hired as an anime actor in Texas. And a lot of the people who are participating here may know, like, that's where a lot of the anime in English gets produced, is like in the Houston and the Dallas areas in Texas. I mean, I was the first one, but then since then there have been at least thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who've worked in anime in Texas. It's been a lot, like a lot. So I figure I would have eventually worked in anime, but that timing was really, for me, it was really important and lucky. But that's the very long version, since we have 2 hours.
Over your time, who do you think, maybe your favorite character that you've done voice acting for?
Oh,
Who would you pick?
well, believe it or not, that is incredibly difficult to pick like a favorite as like the one character that I had the most fun doing or the most challenging or whatever. It's not a stretch at all to say that the most important job I'm sure that I ever did was playing Asuka in Evangelion, because a lot of other things have kind of flowed from that. A lot of the conventions that I've done, like I said, 270 something around the world. Was really hoping that this was going to be my year for Newfoundland. That was I've been to done conventions in 5 Canadian provinces. I was like, oh, I get another one. I'll be more than halfway there. It'd be great. It didn't happen. Anyway, next year I'll do it.
Next year.
But yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to say a favorite. I've worked on hundreds of shows over the years, but And there's been a lot of things that I've just really, really enjoyed. To me, I really like the diversity of it. I love the ability that I could play, a little boy or sassy tsundere teenage girl, or I could be someone's grandma, or I can be a critter. Oh my gosh, critters are really my favorite. I mean, if I'm being honest, critters, like all the critters. I love the critters so much. If I get booked for a job and then I find out that it's some kind of critter, oh yeah, definitely. That's the best. Love critters.
Someone just mentioned on the Discord that they're really finding your virtual Q&A fascinating. So I just pass that along.
Excellent. And of course, people know me for my fixation with Hello Kitty. Excellent.
How about your time going to conventions? Do you have any experiences that stand out? Any funny stories?
Yeah, well, I have done, like I said, a lot of conventions. My very first convention I did, it was Project Acon in Dallas back in May of 1997. And since then, they've just become Acon and whatever, things have changed. I've got a lot of Acon stories. Don't go to Acon. Anyway, but just so thinking about that, like my very first convention, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, conventions, let me just say, in 1997, were really different than now. I mean, there was no social media. A lot of people didn't even have a cell phone back then, much less, smartphones were 10 years away from being invented. DVDs weren't invented yet. There was no streaming. I didn't really have any idea much what to do. I hung out at the AD Vision, the ADV Films table most of the time. I just went behind the table and I was like helping them sell videotapes and t-shirts and stuff. And a guy came up and he asked me something like, when are the signings? Something like that. And I didn't understand what he meant. And I said, oh, did you want to sign up for the newsletter? Because this is how long ago it was. They had a clipboard for people to write down on a paper with a pen, write down on paper their names and addresses and phone numbers or whatever, so that we get on a mailing list to get a newsletter in the mail, like with a stamp on it in your mailbox. I know it's so old-fashioned, kids, but this is true. So anyway, the guy said signings, and I was like, oh, did you want to sign up for the newsletter or something like that? And so I handed him the clipboard, and he looked at me like I was an idiot. And Janice Williams, who's one of the original ADV people, she looks at me and she goes, Tiffany, he's asking you for an autograph. And I said, no, he's not, Janice. Come on, he's not. And I said, you didn't want an autograph, did you? And he goes, and that was so funny. I just felt like an idiot. I was like, you want me to sign an autograph? What? I mean, there were not like lines around the block for people to get an autograph from, Todd Habercorn or whoever. This was like, it wasn't a thing that people were, I mean, honestly, I was afraid I was going to go there and get stoned. I mean, not like stoned, but like people throwing rocks at me stoned. Because there really at that time, this was absolutely the peak fervor of the whole sub versus dub thing, which if people don't know, the genesis of that subtitled versus dubbed into English anime really was about where do you spend your money? Because anime at the time was on a VHS tape, and you were either going to buy one that was in Japanese with English subtitles or one that was dubbed into English. And that's what the sub versus dub debate was at the time. So it wasn't like now, later, then obviously you get a DVD. Well, it has both of them on there. And so a lot of it changed after that. But, I was just afraid I was going to go to conventions. People would not want to see me. They would not care that I was there. They would be angry with me. They would, maybe hurl rotten fruit or something. But yeah, so here was this guy asking me for an autograph, and that was unbelievable. And at the time, Evangelion had just started coming out in the US, and ADV had this really very nice big backdrop behind the booth that was an Evangelion backdrop that had Shinji, Rei, and Asuka on it. And we had already been doing a show called Blue Seed, which was the first TV show that we did. And so I was already in that. I had done several other shows, but I pointed to the backdrop and I said to this guy, I was like, oh yeah, I'm playing that girl there in the red outfits. Like I just started working on Evangelion. It wasn't even out yet at that point, I think. Or the episode that I was in, which was volume 4 of the VHS tape with Asuka Strikes, episode 8. So I pointed to that. And so, yeah, that was my very first convention. And this is in Dallas. And my dad lives in that area. And so I was staying with my dad. And I went home that night and I was like, Dad, I signed an autograph today. I mean, that was crazy. And, since then, hundreds of conventions. And I've just had all kinds of amazing experiences, great experiences, some really like WTF experiences, all kinds of things. Now I've had a digital convention experience, so I don't know. In the future, I'm going to be a hologram, so I'll just be beamed like directly into people's living rooms. That's what I think is going to be the next thing.
We've got some questions actually. Becca has some questions for some people that can't make it today. So Becca, if you can pop in.
Oh yes. So one question comes from Sarah Ellen Carroll, and she wants to know what's the best steps one can take to become a professional voice actor.
I tell you what, there are so many resources for people now that I did not have in 1994, such as the interwebs, which is great. There's a website called voices.com, pretty straightforward, but there is a treasure trove of information on there, really. Anything from, basic stuff like the kind of microphone that you should have, and how to make a demo and all of that stuff. I always find it a little challenging personally to answer those questions about how should I get started in this, because you have to remember I started doing this 26 years ago. So the environment where I started was totally different than now. But I always think that there's something that you can do wherever you are. Gosh, especially now that, you could start your own podcast, or you could make your own thing, whatever your thing is, you can collaborate with other people on the internet, and there's so much information out there. A couple of things that are really important, I find, for voice acting, cold reading ability is really, to me, I think it's the most important thing, is really strong cold reading skills, which is like you just pick something up for the very first time and you read it as if it's a play that you've been rehearsing for a month. So being able to interpret something quickly, things are changing, things are different now because of the internet, but all the same, like when I'm doing an audition, they always say really like a guideline for an audition, don't spend more than 5 minutes on an audition. You shouldn't be spending 30 minutes, an hour, on an audition. So, that kind of ties in a little bit with the cold reading skills too. And then another thing is probably a close second, improv, like the ability to think on your feet and, take in new information and interpret it, the ability to take direction. Let's say you're working with a director and you deliver something a certain way and they're like, yeah, but maybe a little more like this, a little softer, younger, older, whatever they want, and then being able to take in that direction and give it back to them. So, you know, with most voice work, well, again, things are changing a lot more, especially in the past few months with the quarantine and all that. But a lot of times when you're booked on a job, you might not even know what it is when you've been booked on it. And very often you haven't seen the script. Like anytime when I go to record an anime, I don't see the script before I get there. A lot of times I don't even know what it is. So you're seeing the script for the first time, and also the script can very much change while you're recording it. So it's probably a good thing that you haven't been studying it and trying to memorize it and think about how you're going to exactly deliver this one little phrase, because that little phrase might not make it in there. You know, you study the lip flaps a little bit closer when you're in the recording studio and go, oh gosh, no, that's 2 syllables longer than we thought. So we're going to have to rewrite that line. So, you know, you have to be able to really just think on your feet and take direction quickly. So improv and cold reading, I think, really important, and just like reading all the stuff that's out there. And boy, tech is the worst for me. And I feel like younger people probably have an edge on me with that, because I really prefer the old days of me going into a studio and somebody else handles all the technical stuff. I just want to talk into a microphone, you know? And for the last couple of years, I've been doing most of my voice work at my house. So I have to set my microphone and my levels and do all this stuff on my own. And that's been very challenging for me, the technical stuff. I feel that's my biggest challenge is doing that. But anybody can start where they are. I mean, absolutely anybody can start where they are. And there's so many platforms now. You know, when I started working as a voice actor, it's like episodes going on a videotape, you know, and now people are consuming media on all these different streaming platforms. Like I think about when I was a kid and watching TV and how many channels we had. And, you know, now there's like, I don't even know how many streaming platforms, because there's Hulu and there's Disney Plus and there's Netflix and there's Amazon and there's Apple TV and there's Spectrum has their own thing. And I don't know, there's tons of programming. It's like, I don't think I'm the only person who's done this, but you hear something about a show, you hear a promo and they go, and coming soon, season 3 of Figs on a Plate. And you go, what? Figs on a Plate? I've never heard of that, but it's already on season 3. And, you know, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And if they can get a couple hundred people to watch it, it's a hit. So I have veered so far off track with this. Anyway, whatever the next question is, I'll just keep babbling.
No, it's great. It's fun. I like listening. Another question comes from Erica Bussey, and she wants to know, was there a moment or scene, so a specific moment or specific scene in Evangelion that you really enjoyed acting or had a profound effect on you?
A scene or a moment that really, I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Sure. Yeah, a scene or a moment in Evangelion that you either really enjoyed doing or had a really profound effect on you.
Oh, had a profound effect. Wow. Probably a few. The bathtub scene, that was really dark. And probably the one that I remember the most, as far as like definitely having a really profound emotional impact on me, was in End of Evangelion, where she's fighting and she's feeling like, you know, she's lost, she's totally defeated, and it's the I don't want to die scene. And it starts from a point where you almost can't even hear her, to the point where she's saying it was me, but whatever, screaming at the top of her lungs. So it goes like from inaudible to like the loudest that I could possibly do it. And that really did. I remember that very, very vividly. So probably that. And as far as like something that I really enjoyed, there were a lot of things that were pretty fun. Anytime like picking on Shinji, picking on like the Three Stooges, Wonder Girl, any of that, that was a lot of fun, where I was getting to be antagonistic to them. Really felt like her being kind of a normal teenager, like she was more of a normal 14-year-old at that point than the times when she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. Think about like the circumstances that these characters are in, and it is so unbelievably dark and so heavy. And then to have those kind of lighter moments where she's picking on the other people. So very Cinderella of her. So
I personally have a question.
yes, go ahead.
I was wondering, was there a particular co-star or someone that you worked with that you really enjoyed working with, that you had a lot of fun with, or someone that you would like to work with again in the future?
Oh, that is always a really tricky question, because I haven't explained it so far during this session, but we generally work alone. So the way that dubbing is done universally everywhere around the world, for dubbing one thing from one language into another language, if you were dubbing a French movie into Japanese or whatever, you have a script that's written that theoretically it's going to match the mouth movements, and then you bring in one actor at a time. So it's typically just the voice actor in a booth, and then you've got a director and a sound engineer, and those are usually all of the people. So it's pretty rare that you actually get to interact with any of your other co-stars. So I've always really thought about like the people that I work with as being the director and the sound engineer, honestly. And I've been lucky to work with a lot of them that I really enjoyed over the years. And it is a peculiar thing about dubbing, that you really don't get to work with the other actors. And that is kind of the sad aspect about it, that I think a lot of people would miss from doing theater or from doing film, where you have that actual face-to-face connection with another actor. Now, there was a show that we did back, I think it was 2006, called Go Danner, which was tremendous fun, very, very fun. And that we actually recorded, there were these teams of mecha pilots, and we recorded that where we would have 2 actors in the studio at a time, because the pilots were teams, So it was set, in those cases, a lot of their scenes were with that other person, which is what made it practical to do that. And that's really one of the most fun recording experiences I ever had. So my teammate in my little mecha robot team was actually my friend Chris Ayers. And we just had tremendous fun doing that. And if ever I could get to do something like that again, that would be amazing. And who did I record with during that show? I recorded with Chris, because we were like pilots together and we could see each other. So we're in separate booths on opposite ends of the studio, but we could see each other. It was super fun. And then the actor who was the lead in that show, the amazing Brett Weaver, I did have some scenes where I recorded with Brett, where again, we're in separate booths, but we can see each other. And then I also believe I had some scenes that I did with Greg Ayers as well. And all of that was just tremendous fun. So if I if I ever had the opportunity to do something like that again, that would be really, really fantastic.
That's all the comments that I've seen so far. Was just there's
Okay.
2 specific questions. I don't know if there's anybody within this meeting that had a question that wanted to be asked.
Well, I am certainly available, and available for like another
Hour and a half.
Keep those questions coming, people.
John, do you have any questions? Maybe, no, or anyone else?
That's okay, because if people don't have questions, I have loads of crap I can just talk about for hours.
Fire away, fire away.
Unless you mentioned that maybe you had some questions there tucked away, Chris.
I had some questions actually. Some of them were just asked by Becca. Because it's pretty same. I mean,
I tell you, I mean, some of the going back to the like recording studio and experiences in there. One of the questions that I've had a lot over the years is whether I was already an anime fan, or what did I know about anime before I started working in anime. Well, you have to first go back to 1994. It kind of wasn't a word. I mean, it was, but it was not a word that people knew. People did not know the word anime in 1994. That was just not really in the common vernacular at the time. But as a matter of fact, when I was a little kid in the 70s, I did actually watch Speed Racer. I was a huge fan of Speed Racer. It was one of my very favorite cartoons at the time. Clearly, I had absolutely no idea that it was Mach Go Go Go, and that the lead character was really called Go Mifune. I had no idea about any of that. And then later in the 80s, I was quite a big fan of Robotech, which primarily was Macross. And then also that had Genesis Climber Mollispiata and Southern Cross was the other anime. Anyway, so those 3 animes put together. And the thing was that Macross didn't really have enough episodes to make it into syndication. So Carl Masick, who was kind of really a pioneer in the anime industry, he had the idea of kind of editing, not really editing that much, but sort of making it into like one story where you could have these 3 anime together, and then that would be enough episodes that you could create one show out of it. And that's how we got Robotech. And he really didn't change Macross that much. He did change some of the characters' names, like Hikaru became Rick and things like that. But the story, he didn't change too much. But so in regards to those 2 things, which were really a big part of my personal early anime fandom, even if I didn't know it was anime, my first full circle moment was at a convention in 1999. I think it was at 1999. I believe it was Anime Weekend Atlanta. 2 of the guests there were Peter Fernandez, and Peter was he was like kind of the godfather of anime in the U.S. He wrote and directed and produced Speed Racer, and did Ultraman, which was a live action, like a Sentai show, but that was another show I was a fan of in the 70s as well. He did Kimba. So he did a lot of these. He worked on dubbing a lot of the spaghetti westerns, but and Peter Fernandez was the voice of Speed Racer, and he was also played his brother Racer X, and so he was a guest at this convention, and Trixie, oh my gosh, Corinne Orr, who's an incredible actress. She's actually Canadian. There you go. She's Quebecois. But I've lived in the U.S. for a long, long time. But anyway, she and Peter were guests at this convention, and Corinne, oh my gosh, she played Mom's Racer, she played Trixie, she played Spritle, she played Chim Chim, she played any female character who was ever in the show. And when I got to go to a convention and be guests with them, like in the same panel, that was bananas. Like, how could I be in a panel with those people? Like, I mean, I just felt like such a pretender. That was crazy. But just absolutely, totally amazing, you know. And of course, I got pictures with them and autographs and everything. Super awesome. And then a few years later, 2004, Carl Masick actually started working at ADV Films in Houston. He came out there, and I think he worked at ADV for not too long, maybe about 2 years altogether. And the first time I went and worked with him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the Robotech guy. It was unbelievable. And so at that point, what I had been working in anime for about 10 years, so it wasn't like I was a brand new actor with no credits. I mean, I'd already been Oscar, I'd already been going to cons for years and years, but you know, like, oh, I was gonna work with Carl Masick. I was like, wow, amazing. And now that I think about it, actually, it was more like 2002 or something, 2000, maybe 2003. Anyway, yeah, but yeah, I went in calling him Mr. Masick. And I'll never forget, because I wasn't sure exactly how to pronounce his name. And he said, it's Masick, like Sissy Spacek. So that was my mnemonic device, how I always remembered how to say his name. And I mean, may he rest in peace. He is, both Peter and Carl have since passed away. And Carl was not that old either. I think Carl was only maybe in his 60s when he passed away. That was a few years back. That was really kind of a sudden and unexpected thing. Uncle Carl, we called him Uncle Carl. And he was fascinating guy, absolutely fascinating. Peter Fernandez was well into his 80s when he passed away. Another, I mean, absolutely amazing character. He's from New York, Peter Fernandez. He started working in show business as a child model. And he worked in like every facet of show business, from being a child model to working in theater and doing film and television and dubbing and writing and directing and producing and all this stuff. And I mean, just an incredible career, and worked up, you know, almost until the end. So had a career spanning about 80 years. So I'm going for that. I didn't start until I was 25. So I'm going to be pretty old. Yeah, well, you know, it could happen. It could happen. But those are, yeah, a couple of really amazing sort of full circle type moments for me that I got to have. So that was really, really something to think about it.
Are there any characters that you had any, had any particular trouble sort of getting inside the heads of to really do the acting for?
Yeah. There have been a few. There have been a few for sure. I used to have, particularly when I was younger, when I was actually still like in my 20s and 30s, I really had almost kind of a phobia of playing any older characters. I just didn't think that it sounded believable. And that was something that I really struggled with. And, you know, even a lot of times when a director will bring you in for a part, unless it's like the lead role, you'll end up very often doing a lot of little bits where there's just one or two lines here, one or two lines there or something, and they would say, oh yeah, and then there's this old lady in this scene, and I would just like, oh my gosh, I can't do that, I can't be the old lady, so I had a long time kind of coming around to doing that, but I feel like I've broadened my range. One character specifically that I found really, really challenging was Altina in a show called Noir. And it was, as the name implies, a very dark show. And that was around 2002 or 3, I think, when we did that. Beautiful score. I think it was like the Warsaw Philharmonic Orchestra or something did the score for the show. Has incredible music in it. It's a beautiful show, but my character, she was this kind of like high priestess character. And a little bit haughty, but more than anything, she was just very cold. So doing that where, I mean, she's really like kind of the main villain of the story, but whereas I had this tendency where I'm doing a villain and I wanted to be all like, I'll get you, my pretty, like that. But she wasn't that. It was almost monotone. I mean, you can't have it quite be monotone because then it would be boring. But that was really, really challenging for me to do that part. And the chilling part of the role is the fact that she is just so cool and composed about, ordering mass assassinations of people because it's going to fulfill her ultimate, master plan of how things ought to be. That was a really difficult one. And then in a completely different way, a character that I did, called Gemma, who is basically he's an anthropomorphic balloon, if that makes any sense. But it's anime, so we'll just say that it does. And so he was kind of like this yellow balloon floating around, and he was the chaperone. Again, it's anime, so it totally makes sense. And he is the chaperone of the main character, Dejiko. The show is called Digikarat. And the main character is Dejiko, and he's her chaperone. And the thing that was so challenging about that one is that it was very taxing on my voice. Mary F. Wants to come into the...
Whoops. So I've got two screens going here, so I don't... Yeah, sorry.
Hey, Mary F. But doing Gemma, that was really challenging. The character's voice was kind of something like Yoda. I don't know, it was like really high and scratchy and gravelly, and that was difficult. That was so difficult. I couldn't... Very often our recording sessions will go for, up to like 4 hours. And when I was doing that part of Gemma, I could not manage it for more than like an hour and a half. My throat would just be shot. I'd just be guzzling chamomile tea, trying to relax my throat. But that was tough. You have to be careful when you audition for something like, is this a voice that I could maintain for 4 hours? Turns out no. But I think I've been pretty fortunate with most of them, that they've come a little more easily. And it is good. I mean, in my opinion, I like getting cast in something that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know that I would have cast myself in that, because it's a chance for me to sort of stretch my range, think a little differently, and like, what can I do? Different kinds of characters. And I mean, when I started as a voice actor, well, I was 25 years old, so what I was confident is like, oh, I could do young female characters. And so that was like my starting point, is I could do that. And then, slowly branching out from that. Like the first time I did a character that was a little boy, and now that's really one of my specialties. So just learning as I go, like all these different things, like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Huh, okay. So, maybe that, if the person is still listening about questions on tips of being a voice actor, it's, by the way, perfectly okay if all you can do is be yourself. As has been said many times, it's like John Wayne had a whole career of movies where he played John Wayne. So that's fine. But yeah, it's good to challenge yourself and figure out what you can do and also what you can't do. Like, I think I can do an English accent, governor, and like, maybe you really can't. So, figuring out what you can do or working on certain things to get better, and maybe some things, maybe you shouldn't really do that. But.
We have a question on Facebook. Do you have any advice on how to? This is kind of, it goes along with what you're saying. Do you have any advice on how to expand your vocal range? Any specific exercises?
Gosh, not that I can certainly think of right at this moment. I mean, for me, a lot of it's honestly just been trying, just discovering different stuff, auditioning for different things, and like figuring out, how does this character sound? How does he or she, how do they talk? What are they like? I did a panel many 20 plus years ago with the legendary, iconic superstar Wendy Lee, Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop, and like a billion other shows too. Anyway, but she said her way into a character was figuring out how they laugh. And I think that's fascinating. It's not for me. That's not the way I do it. But there you go. It's a little tip from Wendy Lee. I'm giving her full credit for that. I don't know. I mean, I guess I read a quote one time, and I wish I could remember who said this, but the quote was, I look at the character and then their voice comes out of my mouth. That is not particularly helpful, and I do not mean that to be snide, but I don't know. I think a part of it is recording yourself, looking at a show, or maybe if there's some character or show, not that your goal should be just like parroting what other people do, because there are rarely jobs for, they want an exact impression of someone. But if there's a show that you like, maybe transcribing the script and then recording it yourself and just kind of seeing what you can do with it. Not necessarily to sound exactly like that person, but, how would I do it? Anyway, there's so many options now with interwebs and technology and phones and tablets and all that cool stuff that we didn't have in the way back times.
I have a question kind of in like the same vein of what you were just talking about, because a little while ago you mentioned how you had a role where you didn't think that you could keep that voice going for multiple hours of a session. Yes. And your voice was going, right? I remember attending a panel at another convention with another voice actor who had mentioned tangerines and mandarins and small oranges as being a thing that helped clear their throat. Another voice actor had mentioned green apples. And so I did one.
Tangerines, I heard the apples.
So I've done one single voice acting thing in my whole life for like a really small video game thing. And I had that same problem where my voice, like, I was like really struggling to keep my voice going. And I was just wondering if there's anything in particular that you do to help prep your voice, or do you do the apple trick, or is there another type of thing that you do?
I haven't really done. I have a friend of mine, Sammy Hart, who swears by the apples. So that I've actually heard that several times. No, I guess the main thing is for me, water. I do always have my water bottle handy, and I do consume copious amounts of water throughout the day. I don't really count, but I know it's like at least 2 liters. I do drink hot tea, but so if I do have something that's going to be that is really challenging, I'll do like like hot herbal tea. Obviously, I'm not putting milk in it or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, I think hydration is, oh, it's so important. I cannot stress how important hydration is. But I'm not knocking the apples and the tangerines or whatever sort of fruited products people wish to implement in their regimes. I don't know. I don't have all of the experience with those. I do love to eat apples, and I have reported like right after eating apples. So I think there probably is something to that. One of the problems is that if you're like guzzling a lot of water, like right before you record, that also can have an adverse effect on your vocal quality. So that's why I think, the main thing is just to maintain your hydration. So trying to avoid what I call the schmickety schmacks, which is just all these horrible sounds that your mouth makes that you're not even aware of when you're talking normally until you record it on a microphone and you go, oh my God, that's awful. When I'm driving and I hear a radio commercial where there's a lot of mouth noise, drives me nuts. Drives me absolutely nuts. Like, oh, they needed to clean that up.
Stacey Anna Collins replied to your answer about the expansion of your vocal range and said, "That's awesome. Thank you. That was really helpful." And Mary Farrell, who here is Mary F, says, "Have you ever had a job where you just could not find the voice?"
Oh, wow. I don't think so. I mean, because really typically the way you're hired for a job is either because specifically of auditioning for that job, or a lot of the work that I've done is I'm hired based on sort of my body of work, that people are familiar with my range and what I can do, what I have done. And so yeah, I can't really think of something where I was actually hired. I know there have been certainly jobs where I've been auditioning where I feel like I was really close to booking the job and they're saying, we'll try it again like this and try it again like this. But then I can tell that I'm just not getting that magic, whatever it is that they want, So, I don't remember. And I'm not trying to say that like, oh, I'm so amazing, I can do all of the things. But it's just, I think it's more of a fact of like the way the process works. Like when they hire you, they already have a pretty good idea, like, oh, this is within this actor's range. This is something that she can do,
Mary says thanks, and John Edwards over in Discord says, yeah, one of the favorite roles that you've done has to be Martel in Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So, what can you say about your memories of doing that?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, as many people watching this will know, so I worked on the first series, Full Metal Alchemist, and I played this character Marta, who's a sneak chimera, and she's in the second season of the original TV series. So I was in about 10 or 11 episodes. It was a pretty good story arc. She was sort of in Greed, the homunculus Greed, voiced in English by Chris Patton. She was like in his like cadre, and they kidnap Alphonse. And part of the way they kidnap him is that my character Marta jumps inside Alphonse's suit of armor, and they actually kind of become friends that way. And then basically everyone else in this group, oh, I'm sorry, spoiler for this show that came out like 16 years ago, but they all die. A lot of people die in Full Metal Alchemist, so Go figure. Anyways, she's kind of like the last one, and she discovers like the true identity of Führer Bradley, and she goes to tell Alphonse, and she's running from the Führer, and she jumps inside his suit of armor, where she is impaled, and she dies a very messy, tragic death. So this all played out over the course of like 10 or 11 episodes, and then in Brotherhood, then her name was actually Martell instead of Marta. And I was in it for like a minute and a half, and it's like, who is that? Oh, she's part snake. Wait, oh, she's dead now. It was like that. So it was really fast. My character sort of came and went. I think I was in 2 episodes, but not even like 2 whole episodes, like an episode and a half or something, around like episode 14, 15 of Brotherhood. So that was really, really early on. I was a pretty minor character in Brotherhood, but the way I ended up working on Full Metal Alchemist actually was because of the director, and the main director, who was Mike McFarland. He and I had met doing conventions, and so he was like familiar with me as an actor, and he actually had brought me in to do a couple of episodes of Case Closed. And so Case Closed was actually the first thing I worked on with Funimation, and then he brought me in to work on Full Metal Alchemist. Again, not because of a specific audition, but just more of like based on the body of work that I had working in anime at that point for over 10 years. And he told me, this is the way he described Marta to me at first. He said, she's a bad girl with a heart of gold, and everybody is going to be so sad when she dies. So I went into it knowing that she was going to die, and it was very tragic. And in fact, if anybody can remember this awesome magazine, it was around like in the late 90s through the kind of late 2000s, it was called Anime Insider. They had a little feature in there every month that was like the death of the month. And so the month that episode aired on Cartoon Network, Marta got Death of the Month. So it was like, there's a little feather in my cap, you know. Yeah, but one of the cool things about playing Marta is because she was inside that suit of armor, I got to record with the bowl. So this was a protocol established in Japan when they were doing the original recording of the first FMA TV series. The actor who did the part of Alphonse recorded the dialogue where there was a metal bowl between the actor and the microphone, and that was to give that metal reverb kind of sound because of Alphonse's spirit being inside this suit of armor. And so when it was getting dubbed in Funimation, getting dubbed into English, the Japanese made sure that Funimation was using an identical bowl. It had to be the exact same sort of bowl. And they had one bowl. That was it. I mean, this was like, you know, guarding the Holy Grail or something, this bowl. And so when I went up to record, my first session to record as Marta, I went up and I was recording. There was like a secondary studio that Funimation was using that was in Dallas, and their main offices were near Fort Worth in a place called North Richland Hills. Anyway, so we were not at the main studio, and I was recording there with Colleen Klinkenbeard. She was directing me, and we did the first several lines, and then Marta jumps inside Alphonse's armor. She says, "Mind if I drop in?" And she jumps right in there. I mean, she asked, but she's doing it anyway. And I said, "Okay, so do I need the bowl now?" And Colleen goes, "The bowl?" And I said, "Yeah, the bowl. I mean, I'm using the same bowl, right? Am I using the bowl? Because I know that there's a bowl." And she looks at me and she's like, we don't have the bowl here. The bowl's at the other studio. And so there's all these panicked phone calls about the bowl, because Aaron Dismuke, he had to record all of he was the original Alphonse. He had to record all of his dialogue with the bowl, but they only had one bowl. So it was not like you had a bowl at each studio. That was crazy. And anyway, I had to go. I lived in Houston, and just like 260, 70 miles or something away from the studio in Dallas. So I had to go back second time to go up there so I could record with the bowl. And the bowl was, it's just like a mixing bowl. If anybody has a metal mixing bowl in their kitchen, I can't imagine this was a bowl that cost more than like $10 or something. I mean, it was a very, very ordinary bowl, but it was a specific size and shape. And, we couldn't just go down to Walmart and get some other bowl because it would have been the same bowl. And we had to use the bowl, the holy bowl. Yeah. So there you go. Thoughts on Marta.
Another really small, short-lived role that you had was that clumsy secretary coffee holder person.
Yes. Kisaragi.
Yeah.
In Elfin Lead. Yep.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you had any funny things to say about that character, because honestly, I can't say that's my favorite character of yours, but like I love that you voiced this like one-off character that lasted for a single minute in the show.
I know. So, okay, when they were starting to work on Elfin Lied, and it is Lied, it's a German word that means poem or song. When they were starting to work on the show, now I have to admit to you, I'm really squeamish. I don't really do like horror movies. I know it's fake, okay? I know people aren't really getting killed in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know. I'm just saying, I'm squeamish. I don't really watch those kinds of shows. But, so I wasn't really like in Elfin Lied. But I was approached. They said that, Tiffany, how do you feel about the idea? We think it would be really funny that we're going to cast you as this character, and then people will think, oh, it's Tiffany Grant playing this role, so this is like a major character or something, and then you get killed off almost immediately. And I said, I love it. I think that's hilarious. So yeah, I mean, she's in there, she's stumbling around, and then, Lucy snaps her head off, and it's like, she gets beheaded. And I'm so squeamish, and I can remember being in the studio, and they had to edit very precisely. So there was a point when I'm screaming, but there's a really exact point when the scream ends, when her head gets separated from her body. And I had to keep watching the sound engineer like reverse and play for like her head getting popped off. And it was like, oh, And then several weeks later, I get this call like to come in and work on Elfin Lied. I was like, I was beheaded already, right? And they were like, oh yeah, but it's a flashback. So I actually did get to play the character a little bit more. Well, actually significantly more than I did in the first episode. But yeah, she had that flashback where she's trying to carry a tea tray across the room, and she's tripping everywhere. And, she kind of had it coming, honestly. But yeah, that was super fun. I loved that. I really did. I think all that stuff is fun. I have no problem. I have no ego at all about like, oh, I have to be the lead. I have to be the most important character in the show. I'm not. Just like, if it's fun, whatever. I just like doing it. It's okay. And I get so much feedback about that, about playing Kisaragi. I mean, I don't even know how many Elfin Lied DVDs I've signed over the years. So, awesome. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, I had no idea that character was like brought up to you knowing that it was going to be hilarious that you were going to be killed off so quickly. That actually makes the whole thing way funnier.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they said. I was told, and I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't remember her name, but I was told that the person who played the role in Japanese, that she was fairly well known and that it was kind of a gag in Japanese, and they thought that it would be funny to like carry that joke over. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'm up for that. So yeah, kind of one of the reasons that I'm not really in Gantz very much. Oh wow, yeah, Gantz is like really, really graphic. I know it's a cool show, very cool sci-fi, but yeah, Gantz is really graphic, and I'm in Gantz about that much. So, not my cup of tea, but I know they're both really good shows for other people.
I think Liz is going to have a question in a moment. The,
Oh,
the
okay.
the chat is private, but it's actually ending up on Facebook Live too. So
Oh, okay. All right, that's
soon,
fine.
as soon as Liz replies, Busy Bee is the yeah. Um, Actually, while I have you, while I'm waiting for Liz, are there any characters, any actor, I'm sorry, any roles over the years that maybe not necessarily ones that you tried to get, but any particular characters that you thought, oh, you would have loved to have done that role or anything like that? Not 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 in terms of being upset about it, but just you would have thought that would have been fun to play or something like that.
Oh, well, that's a constant. That's absolutely a constant. I mean, there was a job just yesterday that I found out that I didn't book, and I was really, I thought I had this job. I mean, it was a commercial type job, but it was like a character role for a commercial thing, and I really thought I had it, and I didn't have it, and it's disappointing every time. I have to say it's a rough business to be in. That because it's personal, or can be personal. That it you really have to have a tough skin. That it's not necessarily that you personally are being rejected, but they're listening to the different voices that they're considering for a role and what voice they think is the best one for that role. But yeah, I mean, there's any number of times that there was a part that I really wished that I had gotten that part and I didn't get it. I mean, it's all part of this business. It's part of doing the job. So sad but true, sad but true. But I mean, as far as, I think you may be even asking about, like, not necessarily something I auditioned for that I didn't get, but like if I saw a movie and go, oh, I wish I could have played that part. I don't necessarily have that particular point of view when I watch something that I think, oh, I would have done it better than she did, or anything like that. I mean, I can just watch something and appreciate it for what it is, I think. And I don't know that I too often have that feeling of thinking, that should have been me or whatever. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, does Liz have a question? We can go into that.
I'll just there's a comment from Stacey Ann Collins over on Facebook saying they remember being super hurt about the death of the character that you were just talking about a few moments ago. And Liz's question is, have you watched any of the shows you've voiced in fully once aired, or do you find it difficult listening or watching yourself in these roles?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of it. I mean, I can just absolutely admit to you, no, I have not watched every single show that I've done. I have not. That's the truth. I have not. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I listen to my voice literally all day long. So that's not a hurdle for me at all. I'm very accustomed to listening to my voice. I know what I sound like. And it doesn't bother me. I get that. I mean, I can remember being a kid, and like the first time when you hear a recording of your voice and it never sounds to you like what you think you sound like, because you hear your voice echoing inside your own head. So it sounds different to you listening to yourself than what it sounds like to other people. But I listen to myself. I mean, if I was not on this chat, I would be sitting at my desk recording auditions right now, listening to my voice all day long. So um, that's not really an issue. But yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot. I've watched all of Evangelion more than once. Yeah, I've watched a lot of the shows that I've worked on, but again, I will be honest and say I've not watched all of them. I have not watched all of One Piece. I did a podcast a while back where there was this guy and he was like a super One Piece fan and he's watched whatever 500 and something episodes that have come out so far, and I'm like, oh well, no, I've only watched a few of them, so no. It asks me a lot of super complex One Piece questions. I'm like, I'm not really like a One Piece expert. I might just kind of know about the characters that I played. So, yeah.
Over on Facebook, Mary Farrell asked, "What percentage of auditions are successful for you?" I don't know. That's
Oh. Now that I audition a lot, I would say it is sadly a very low number. It's probably somewhere like in the 1% range. It's pretty low. It's pretty low. But I mean, I audition for a lot of stuff, and I audition for any kind of thing you might imagine could possibly have a voice in it. Telephone system. There's so many explainer videos now. Toys, games, video games, anime, obviously. I mean, my percentage with anime was significantly higher than anything else. But yeah, I mean, I audition for all kinds of stuff all day long. I do usually more than 100 auditions a week. I audition a lot. It's a really, now when I think back and when I was younger and people used to say, oh, you'd be really lucky if you got, what did they used to say, like 10% of the jobs that you audition for. I was like, wow, I'd love to get 10% of the jobs I auditioned for, but hey, there's a lot of competition, so.
And Liz actually asked another question. Are there any new anime you're doing voices for now or soon that you can share with us? Which actually brings up a question I was going to ask. Is there anything upcoming, any work upcoming that you...
Not, the last anime that I worked on was last year, One Piece actually, was the last One Piece movie. It was the episode of East Blue, which is really just kind of a compilation of the first, I don't know, 20 or something episodes of the series, the hour-long story arc that one of my characters, Nojiko, is in. She's Nami's big sister. So that was actually the last anime that I've worked on. I have worked on some other video games more recently than that. One called Never Song, which is absolutely beautiful. People can Google any of this stuff, but Never Song, which just came out in May. Another game that I worked on recently is a mobile game, Bloom Barrage, and I play a mouse lemur, which is like the smallest primate, but I mean it's a cartoon character, obviously. Yeah, Bloom Barrage. That's a mobile game, and that's a couple of the recent projects that I've worked on. So worked more on games recently.
Something you mentioned, like way early on in the panel, was that you used to just kind of stick to young women or young girl characters because that was the voice that you were most comfortable with, and eventually you were able to like move on and do other voices like young boys and stuff like that. And I was wondering if there was a particular role that you were cast as, that you got the role that kind of made you realize, like, oh, I can kind of make my voice do other things other than just young girls? Like, was there a moment that made you realize you had a more versatile voice?
Uh, well, yeah, I can think of a couple things. One was in the summer of 1996. I worked on a show that has really developed quite a cult following called Golden Boy. It is a 6 episode OVA series that's based on the manga. And in the first episode, I played the main female character in that episode, Madam President. And she is this tall, very buxom blonde lady wearing an impossibly small outfit with a lot of jiggling. And it was a very, very sultry character. And I really couldn't figure out why the director thought I could even play that role. So I thought, why does he think I can do this? And then I did it, and it's, kind of like there's no convention that I go to, at least in person, where somebody doesn't talk to me about Golden Boy. I mean, it's just, it's 24 years and people are still talking about Golden Boy. So that was really a thing to me, like, oh wow, okay, I could do that. That's amazing. And the first little boy character that I played, which is actually just a little bit before that, the first little boy that I played, and it wasn't a very large role either, but it was a movie called Super Atragon, which has been made into many live action versions in Japan. It's based on their version of Atlantis, which is the lost city of Mu. But anyway, the male lead in that is the character was called Go, and he was like a naval officer, and he was voiced by Aaron Crone before he was Kaji in Evangelion in this movie. And there was a flashback to him as a little boy, and I played Aaron Crone as a little boy, and I don't know how many lines I had, maybe a half a dozen lines, but I was like, I can play a little boy? What? But again, the director cast me as that because that has been traditional ever since there's been voice acting, going back to, radio theater, radio programs that were on, in the 30s. They had women doing the voices for little boys, and in cartoons and all of that, like June Foray, legend, and she died recently. What was she, like 99 years old? And she, one of her famous roles that she did is she was Rocky the Flying Squirrel. But she, so maybe I will be doing this for another, however many, 50 years or something. So those were a couple things that really opened my eyes. Like, oh, I could play a little boy. I can play this like sexy character. So every time I would kind of get cast in a role like that, I would think, oh, I don't know, like how do I do that? And I just kind of had to figure it out, like how does this character sound, And again, kind of around that same time period, we did these Slayers OVAs, and there were sort of these villagers that are getting attacked by a big creature, and there's a series of characters where there's a mom and a little kid, and I played all of the moms and all of the little kids, and some of them were little boys, some of them were little girls. So there was the mom who would say something like, oh no, dear, you mustn't look at the whatever, and then the little kid would be something like, oh, I don't know, Mom, it's so scary. So, just like learning how to do that and being like more than one character in a scene. And that was really a big deal for me. So a lot of it was just sort of learning on the job, just learning as I went. And what I kind of have to go back to is that I was really in this at an early point. I was in on the ground floor. So there wasn't like somebody that they could go to and go, oh, well, let's get, June Foray. I mean, they're not going to get June Foray, but let's go and get, Sally Smith, because Sally specializes in playing these little boy characters. There wasn't anybody else to go to. We were all kind of making this up as we went along. So I was really lucky that I just was given these opportunities to be able to do these parts and learn that I could do these characters. And that was really amazing that I had the chance to do that. So yeah, I mean, that happened to me several times where I would be cast in something like, oh, I don't really know how to do this, but I'll give it the old college try. And I guess, worked out. So,
You mentioned some of the folks you worked with in the past, and there's a question on Facebook actually. Are there any voice actors that you haven't worked with yet that you would? I mean, I don't know if there are many, but that you haven't worked with yet that you would set as a goal of someone you want to work with in the future.
oh, wow. Gosh, I'm sure there are tons of people that I would love to work with, but again, it kind of goes back to what I was explaining about working with. So I'm not really in the studio with the other actors. So, I mean, it would be awesome to be in a show with somebody like Wendy Lee or Steve Bloom or somebody like that, Crispin Freeman. It'd be great to work on a show with them, but we're never really in the studio together. So as much as that would be like a feather in my cap, and like, oh, I was in the show with Steve Bloom, but like, oh, well, okay, but he's not really there, so it doesn't, it's not like we would be, especially now, we have to be at least 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, of course, I think it would be amazing. It's so funny that actually by doing conventions, I've met a lot of actors that, like, oh, I worked on this anime with you and we've never met before. So that's a thing. As a matter of fact, I've pointed this out many times in the past, but Spike Spencer, who of course played Shinji in Evangelion, he and I didn't meet until we were about halfway through Evangelion. So when we were first working on the show, he and I had never even met. And there was some point, I used to ask a lot of times, when I was finishing up my session, like, oh, who's coming in next, And I had asked who's coming in next, and they said, Spike Spencer. And I remember I was leaving the building, I went outside, and he was coming in. He was in the parking lot. I was like, oh, hey, you must be Spike. So I, met Spike Spencer in the parking lot in between Ava recordings. So I'd like to work with Spike Spencer again, as a matter of fact. Yes, he and I haven't actually worked together on a project in a long, long time. Since the last Ava movie.
When looking at like the things that you've done in the past, looking at your large portfolio, it mentions that there's quite a few different Ava things that you voiced in. Like there's the movie remakes and stuff like that. Was there any like? I think it mentioned not like a podcast or something, or like a radio show, possibly. Or was there any video game that you voiced as well? Like, what are some of the more interesting Ava things you voiced?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have not been able to do all of the Ava things, which I mean, I would love. In Japan, they've had tons of Evangelion video games and pachinko games and dolls and toys and all kinds of stuff that that Yuko Miyamura has been able to work on, and just those things have never been translated into English. They've never been brought to Western audiences, so that's unfortunate. So for me, I've really just worked on like the TV series and the movies, and there is an online project, Ava R, which is eva-r.com. And I first worked on that back in, I believe, 1997. And the guy who created that, and it's like a Evangelion fan fiction, uh, and he started on that. I think he was about 18 years old or something, 18, 19 years old, like a college freshman, and now he's a neurosurgeon. Because I mean, it's over 20 years. So, like, he grew up, he went to college, he's a doctor, he's very important now. But he still runs my website, which is amazing. And still, Ava R is still up and running, which people can check it out. So did Oscar for that as well. Many years ago, like in the late 90s, for some period of time, Ava R had the distinction of being the only Evangelion online sort of fan project that was actually sanctioned by Gynax. So that's a real thing. It was pretty cool. But if I ever had the chance to work on any of the other Ava projects, that would be amazing. I would love to do that.
Any more questions from anyone? We're running towards the end of it here. How has it been in the last? I mean, we've all had, massive changes in our life. How has it been? I guess you're doing more stuff remotely than actually going into studios. How's the change with everything going on? How's adapting to that been?
Well, actually, I was already doing that before, so it's really not a change for me. For the last couple of years, I've done most of my projects I've actually done from my home studio. So really has not changed that much for me. I have occasionally gone in, when I worked on the One Piece movie last year, I did go into an actual like professional studio where we were patched in with Funimation for that. But I mean, for me, it hasn't really changed that much as far as, how I work recording at home in my little booth that I have there, my small in-home studio. That has not changed too much for me.
Tell us something about that. How is it set up? How is your home studio set up there? For anybody that might want to set one up.
It's fairly basic. I mean, I guess I could take you guys in there and show it to you. I don't know. I'm thinking about that. Kind of got a lot of stuff on my desk right now. But the main thing is having a good microphone. And as I said earlier, I am not a good technical expert person, but I do have a condenser mic. I've got an Audio-Technica AT2020 mic, and I have a makeshift booth that I pull around me whilst I am recording. And when I started out, not that many people had a home studio, and if you did, it was something that cost thousands and thousands of dollars to set up. And now you can reasonably set something up for, hundreds of dollars. You can get a decent mic for a couple $100 and, pop filter, and you need to have some kind of environment. A lot of times people will set up a recording booth inside a closet. But as long as you've got, kind of a soundproofed area to record in, and there are a lot of different recording softwares that people use. I just use Audacity, which is free. And again, I'm not a big tech person, so I did recently get this RX7. It's an audio editor software from Isotope, and it's incredible. It can fix stuff like mouth clicks and implosives and different background sounds and stuff like that. It's absolutely amazing. As that was a recent investment that I did, but yeah, you know, it's again, there are so many resources on voices.com and a lot of other places. There's a website, and I might get this wrong, but it's something like so you want to be a voice actor.com or something like that. There are just tons and tons of resources out there to help people get started and set something up that's reasonably good. And you know, and for me, it's been very much learning as I go. You know, I started out with a dynamic mic, but that's kind of got that's really much more geared towards a truly professional setup. And for most people recording in their homes, and I cannot explain to you all the technical differences, so please do not ask me, but condenser mics are generally considered to be much, much better for that. And, you know, you can get a good one for under $200 and you can spend thousands. So one of these days I'll have a new one. One can dream.
I have like a really like quick little one-off question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find a difference when you're recording with your voice in the morning versus midday versus evening? Like, do you find the dreaded morning voice affects your voice acting?
Well, I don't. That's an excellent question. I don't ever like get up in the morning, roll out of bed, and 5 minutes later I'm recording. That is not a thing. That's not a thing. So I'm pretty well, you know, warmed up by the time I've had a giant mug of hot tea. This is like more than a half a liter here. And lots of water. You know, so I'm warmed up by the time I start recording. I usually find that I'm probably better in the morning and midday than like the later it gets. Probably my voice is suffering as the day goes on. And sometimes at night I'm really bad that I'll think, you know, I'm kind of tired, but maybe I could just get in one or two more auditions. And I'm sitting there trying to edit it and I'm going, okay. And then when I get to the point, like, I'm not really sure what I just recorded. That's probably time to stop. I mean, when you're actually dozing off in front of your computer, you're probably not going to record your best. So, yeah, one of the things that I've learned is like when you have, at least for me, when I have a deadline that's like, oh, it's tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, even though I would be great to record at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, I usually try to do it, if possible, the evening before, so I'm not like trying to rush to get it in. Or I live in just a regular neighborhood, so one of my issues is lawn equipment. Like a lot of times I will sit down, you know, I want to record and the guy next door is mowing his lawn, so I cannot do anything while that is happening. I also live near a very small airport, so a lot of times I sit down to record an audition and I start talking and I go, and there's an airplane. All right, waiting for the airplane. It's flying back over. I'm waiting for the airplane. So those are issues, you know. I mean, obviously, if you're in a like from the ground up built professional studio, you don't have to worry as much about stuff outside, but unfortunately I do. So problem, lawnmowers and airplanes.
Okay,
and
well,
helicopters.
this has been a wonderful chat. Do you have any last things you'd like to tell your fans here in
Well,
Newfoundland and other places that might be watching?
absolutely. Yeah. First of all, thanks to everybody who joined us here. I think that's great. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to some point in the future when we'll be able to see each other in person. That will be amazing. Until then, I mean, look, I know it's rough, everybody. I I know it is. The social distancing and wearing masks. It's hard, but I mean, we've just got to keep doing it. We've just got to keep up with the masks and the hand washing, and you should wash your hands anyway. Okay, I just want to say, like, everybody, please just wash your hands anyway, regardless of whether there's a pandemic. Just do that. Um, yeah, and just stay safe out there. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, there's my website, tiffanygrant.com, .net. Either one works. And you can find, I don't directly do Facebook, so I don't do a personal Facebook page, but I do have a group that I participate in, Tiffany Grant Fan Club. I did not start the Tiffany Grant Fan Club, so no, I did not start a fan club for myself, but there is such a page, and you can interact with me through either one of those things. And I would be very happy to connect with anybody there. I even started doing a few months ago little recordings for people for $10 for like things where I will be Oscar or whoever else and chiding you to wash your hands for the like the full. I do it for 30 seconds. I know they say 20 seconds, but I shoot 30. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, people want to get in touch with me. Pretty easy to do. I'm available.
I have to make one closing comment. I can only imagine the person that made that Tiffany Grant fan club page on Facebook, how they must have felt when you actually personally joined the group and started interacting.
Yeah, well, let me tell you what, they actually formed a group back in 2007, and I didn't even join it until about 2017, I think. So the group was up for like 10 years before I ever got on there. I would troll it sometimes. I'm not a big social media person because I just personally think there's way too much drama in social media. So I don't tweet. I'm not a tweety person, but you can find me in the Facebook group, and I will interact with you there if you want to. You don't have to, but anyway, you can send me ye oldie fashioned email and do that. But yep, I'm on the old Facebook there. So.
Anybody have any last things pop into their head? I'm not seeing anything on Facebook. This was wonderful, and can't wait to meet you in person next year.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Same time next year, we'll all be together. We'll all be vaccinated. It'll be a whole magical new world. I'll get one of those cool hats.
We'll have one special for you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yes.
And
thank you so much.
Bye.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thanks. You guys too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.